the next session of the fifth rugby coaching program. Ali, if we could have the next slide, please. Before we started, I wanted to thank VO for sponsoring today's session and helping us to schedule Nigel Owens as our guest for today. VO is National Collegiate Rugby's official camera and provides substantial support to college rugby. Many of our teams are already using the VO's AI technology to record and analyze their games and live stream to fans. There are 3 more days to take advantage of VO's preseason sale and save $400. You can just use that QR code that's on there, or more information is available at ncr.rugby. So now that we're done thanking our sponsor, and they've been a great team member for us, I would like to introduce our guest for today, Nigel Owens. Nigel's probably one of the most recognized referees in the world. He was the first person to officiate 100 test matches, which is a phenomenal feat. During his time while refereeing, and since then, he has been working tirelessly for equality, inclusiveness, and mental health. And since his retirement in 2020, he's currently coaching young referees while he's raising Hereford cattle on his farm. Thank you, Nigel, for taking time today to share your thoughts on today's topics. Nigel?
I'm just thinking, seeing if he's here, Dave. Hold on a second.
I think he just tried to get in. Nigel, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Well, you just missed your introduction.
Oh, apologies.
I was just remarking about how since you've retired, you're now raising Hereford cattle. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. Hereford cattle. Yes.
Excellent. Well, as some folks said earlier, today is my birthday, and 8 years ago, I spent my birthday with you at the Golden Oldies.
Is that 8 years ago, was it, Dave? Wow.
It was 8 years ago.
Yeah, time goes fast.
It does. Just a little bit of housekeeping here, folks. We're scheduled for 60 minutes to cover all the topics. We're going to request that rather than talking here directly, if you could type your questions into the chat messages, and Brad Dufik will be monitoring it and collating the questions and provide those to us. Next slide, please. Ali, next slide, please. Okay, there we go. Session topics for today you can see there. And the first one, Nigel, is in American sports, there always seems to be a separation between the coaches and the officials. I know in other parts of the country, or the world, there seems to be a little bit more cooperation between the officials and the coaches of the various teams. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how referees and coaches can work together to further the game and reduce the coaches' frustration levels.
Yeah, hi everybody. That's a very good point, and it's a bit like refereeing itself. It's a very difficult balance to get right, because when you think about it, when as a coach, when you have the ball or your team has the ball, you want the referee to strictly referee the defense. But then when you don't have the ball and you are the defense, you don't want the referee to referee it as strictly. So it's a very difficult balance to get in pulling people together and working together, because it used to be a very much sort of us and them many years ago. That has changed for the good of the game, but there still is that divide, which I think you will always have, I believe, because coaches will always be frustrated with your decisions, with outcomes of games, as will spectators and pundits and everybody. So it's a very difficult balance to get. But there is no doubt but that by pulling together and working together and understanding what the coaches want, and that usually is consistency above anything, but also as well in coaches understanding what the referee has to do and how difficult it is to officiate a game, particularly a game that is so open to different interpretation. So there has, I believe, been a lot of positive stuff from the last sort of 10, 15 years in having open conversations. But I think what we have to remember is that it will never be perfect. And I think that is where we're at the moment. I think we need coaches to understand that a refereeing performance will never be perfect. And just as a coach needs to understand that his players for that 80 minutes can never be perfect. So I think what is important, I think, is that transparency, I believe. Transparency in the way that decisions and outcomes are fed back and are discussed. And that's probably been the frustration that we've probably seen over the last few years, is that transparency. And that's maybe is where we're at the moment, I think. Particularly over the last couple of years when we saw a lot of outcry from some coaches regarding refereeing performances and sort of not the proper channels gone through. But then you have to sort of peel it back and try and understand, well, why you want the proper channels gone through. So I think it definitely does benefit the game as a whole. But at the end of the day, I think what we need to remember is that you have to referee the game. You're there to apply the laws of the games in the way that you feel they need to be applied at that time, for the best of the game, with the consistency, of course. So it is, as I said, I think it is an important part of the game moving forward. But it's not going to be perfect. There'll always be, I think, a coaches and a referees. You're always going to have that sort of slight divide or slight sort of different interpretation of things moving forward.
Do you think coaches should have some input into how referees are applying the laws to the game?
Yeah, I think that does happen. I think particularly when I was refereeing at World Rugby, we would get together before a major tournament, particularly so before the Six Nations, before a World Cup, or before Rugby Championship, or sort of in between the boths. We would, in the new sort of refereeing calendar year or the rugby calendar year, we would get together where all the coaches and the referees would come together in a conference or a seminar, and we would sort of discuss. What we would discuss on that day was, for example, let's say that the coaches may have been a little bit maybe surprised or a little bit disappointed or felt that certain area of the game needed to be refereed stricter. So obviously that feedback would come through the referees, managers, and back to the referees. And I'm speaking at the World Rugby level here now. And then, so obviously that's where that feedback would come from, or from the governance of the game. So then when we got together, then we would discuss those issues. So the coaches may have said, well, look, we want the juggler refereed strictly. So we want to have clear space after the tackle is completed and clearly on their feet. So then we would discuss that then together. So the referees would say, well, look, this is the way that we discuss it. This is the way we're going to referee it, and the coaches would have their say. What was quite interesting was when you asked the coaches, how do you want this referee, or is there areas of game that the feedback all the time used to be for most of them was just referee the law. That's what the general feedback is. Look, just what is the law? Well, just referee the law. Now, obviously, that is the issue. Then is getting that balance. If and I remember saying to one of the coaches, well, if you want me to referee the law, you're not going to have a game of rugby. I can blow for anything. So I have to decide what I believe needs to be addressed and what needs to be sort of put aside for that moment, based on the clear and obvious, obviously. So that's how we sort of. I believe that's obviously I'm not involved now, but I believe that's still ongoing. There's a lot of collaboration between the coaches, and obviously World Rugby and referees and referee managers as well. So there's a lot of things that are always ongoing regarding where is the game that need to be refereed stronger, or maybe vice versa as well. There'll be clear messages going back to the coaches. Look, we're seeing this trend happen in the game. You need to stop doing this because the referees now are going to be aware of this and going to clamp down on it. So it works both ways.
How does that work its way down to like community rugby or collegiate rugby?
That's a very good question. It certainly does work down because obviously it's the same as players, same as coaches, same as referees. What they see happening at the very, very top end of the game is what they'll do themselves. So if a coach sees a top level coach coaching a certain tactic or a certain style in the game successfully, then they'll try to take that into their coaching ideas and stuff as well. And refereeing is the same. So everything that sort of is. So for example, when I was when I was involved in World Rugby as a referee, when we would have these refereeing camps or mini camps, whatever they were, I would then feed that back then to the rest of the professional referees in Wales, the elite referees in Wales, and obviously that to be fed back then through our local referee society. So then I would go and take a training topic maybe in a local referee society and sort of pass all that information on as well. But obviously trying to get them to understand that the game that you're going to watch in your local park on a Saturday afternoon is going to be very different to the game you're going to be watching live on telly at 8 o'clock in the night as well. The speed of the game, but the referee deals with certain things. The skills of the player allows you to referee things differently in one sense. So, for example, if you were reffing a professional game of rugby and the scrum went down, but the ball was available and on the way out, then we would be told, look, as long as it's safe or you feel it's safe, if the ball is actually on the way out as the scrum collapses, then we can play on. But obviously in the community game, the clear message then to the community referees was, look, if the scrum goes down, you blow the whistle straight away, because you have different strengths, different mindsets, different skills as well. So there was then, so when I'm talking about differences in the professional end of the game and the community end of the game, that would be one example. So when I used to go and speak to local referees or take training sessions here, I'd always make that quite clear, that outside the professional end of the game, if a scrum collapses or a scrum stands up, you blow the whistle straight away. The safety is paramount. And they would say, well, when we're watching the game, or when we watched you referee last week, or we watched Wales play on the weekend, the referee allowed the ball to be played away from the scrum after the scrum went down. Well, on the professional end of the game, that was allowed as long as it was not too long after the scrum had collapsed and it became a dangerous situation. So that feedback, I think, is crucial as well. But obviously an understanding that, well, look, there are some things that the referees at the top end of the game may well referee or deal with things slightly different than you can because of the skills and the speed and everything that's involved with the difference of the game. Although the fundamental, I suppose the head contact would be one. It's taken out of the referee's hand at the higher level of the game. You have different cameras looking at something again, medics there suggesting or advising if a player leaves the field or not. If you're refereeing a community game and you've seen somebody have a pretty bad bang on the head and you think he's a little bit wobbly on his feet, then you make sure that he gets removed from the game. There is no HIA or, get him off for 10 minutes. You just get this player safety first of all. So there is a slight difference, although the general stuff will be the same. But that feedback, I think, is important, especially the do's and the don'ts.
Is there something we as referees should be doing to assist coaches? beyond simply just the feedback?
Yeah, I think that's happening. It's been happening for a while. So, for example, I quite often go to my local community club here, referee a few of the training sessions pre-season, go through the new law changes with them. And then obviously I would do the same as a pressure referee. Then we would be available again to the regions here in Wales. So when Phil Davis was coaching the Scarlets, for example, I would be in with the Scarlets every Tuesday morning, and give them feedback on areas of the game where they were very disciplined the week before. Help them how to sort of address that, referee the contact sessions to get rid of those habits, and obviously giving feedback as well. And the same with Wales. I'd go in with the Welsh team then to go through the law changes with them, or if they wanted me in to referee contact sessions, and that goes for every country. You know, the likes of John Lacey and Roland, and he's doing it in Ireland, and the likes of Wayne Barnes and the referees doing it in England as well. And obviously as well, then I would. So let's say Wales had played a game in the Six Nations, and they sometimes would send me a couple of clips and say, well, look, what are your thoughts on this? And I'd say, well, look, no, you know, the referee, this is a 50-50, you know, it just becomes the referee interpretation. Or I would say, look, no, the referee's correct here. Okay, fine. But you have a point here. These, for me, these three are errors. You know, these should not be penalties. And then they would then know then that whatever they send back to World Rugby was not, you know, 20, 30 points with, you know, half of them irrelevant or the referee was correct. At least what they would send back would really matter then. So there's a lot of things like that you know would happen, and has happened for a while and still happening as well. And what you are seeing more of now at the professional end of it is the likes of Jerome Gossez is with France, Jakob Piper is with South Africa. I think Roman Pat was with I think he was with Toulon, Roman was, but he's gone now to the FFR now. So you're seeing a lot of professional clubs, particular, using referees now in helping them with that feedback, helping players prepare how they deal with the referees, how the captain speaks to the referees, what trends to look out for with certain referees. So that's happening at the professional end, and I think it's happening as well, I suppose, you know, at the lower levels as well. I mean, we know here in Wales, there's a referee who retired last year, who'd been refereeing in the Premiership. He's now helping Bridgend, who's in the Welsh Premiership this year, with their sort of refereeing sort of, you know, feedback and stuff like that as well.
Good. What can coaches do to help referees? Besides the gentle encouragement from the sideline.
Yeah, I think maybe let the referee the game. No, I think it's, you know, the coach is an important part of the game, a hugely important part of the game, and you know, I think what you need, and I remember having a conversation with he's an international coach now actually, but he wasn't at the time, and if his team would lose, he'd send in about 30-40 clips, and 20 of them were irrelevant. The referee was correct. Another 10 were 50-50, could go either way. And then another maybe 7 or 8 would be valued points where the referee, you know, could have given a better or different decision, or the referee got something wrong. And if he won, you'd hear nothing. You know, you were good, but if you lost, then you could expect 40 clips coming in. I remember having a conversation with him, and I said, you know, what is going to happen is that referees are going to switch off. When you send 40 clips in, if a coach sends in 40 things to me, then I'm not going to bother looking at this, because I know there are 40 things in this game that I didn't get wrong. Now, if you send me in 6 or 7, or even 8, sometimes there could be more, you know, but send me in the ones that really matter. That will help the referee with his improving his performance. It'll also help that relationship between a referee and coach, I think, as well. And I think that obviously then benefits the game as well, because the referee can go back to the coach and say, well, look, look, this is the way that this is refereed, or this is the way that I will be refereeing this, or this is the way it should be refereed, or is refereed. Or you go back and sometimes you just say, look, yeah, no, I got that wrong. There's a reason why I got it wrong. So you learn a lot like that. So I think that's important, because you will get that mutual respect is important, and you'll get a lot more of that. For a coach who sent me 8 clips, I knew that there were, and I could have had 6 of them wrong out of the 8. But a coach who was sending me 40 clips, then it was just, oh, here we go again. They've lost, and they're just looking for any excuse. So that feedback is important. I think it benefits everybody. It helps you as a referee as well. But obviously as well, that feedback needs to be. And this is where, as I said earlier, a referee can help with that feedback. So I would have a chat with Warren Gatlin or Rob Howley and say, well, look, if you're going to send 25 clips in, they're just gonna switch off when you're going to be a morning coach. Send in 5 ones which really matter, and then you will get the feedback. You may not like the answer, or it make no difference to the fact that you lost the game, but there's an acknowledgement that that the referee did get it wrong. Or also it can help you as a coach then as well in understanding how certain things are refereed as well.
That's I appreciate that. It's very valid. We're starting to see the coaches on our national events questioning things and sending clips afterwards. And some have been exactly as you explained, 30 clips, and others have been very distinct. And I'm glad you brought that to a point there for us. Moving right along, one of the things that NCR group has been struggling with is the new tackle law for community rugby. There are some that say that it's going to speed the game up. There are others that say we're going to see a dramatic increase in penalties. What's your overall thoughts regarding the new tackle law for community rugby?
So the new law, the community rugby law, would be sort of the nipple line and below, isn't it? Is it the same? It's the same.
Correct.
The same law that you.
Ali, if you want to throw up that slide, please. Ali?
It's coming, Dave. It's being slow. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nigel. All right.
Yeah. Nigel, it's gone from the shoulders down to below the sternum.
Yeah, so below the nipple. Okay, it's the same. It's the same as we're talking about any other side. But to be honest with you, David, having watched some of the community games here over the last season or so, it's not the community game that has the problem, I don't think, with the head-on-head. Because I watched many community games, my local rugby club, and very rare you saw a head-on-head contact, because I think it's coached more at the professional end. You have the double tackles, you have the rugby league style of defense coaches. Well, your community club doesn't have the rugby league defense coach, so it's not really an issue, really. And so for that reason, in the games that I watched, I haven't seen it becoming an issue either. But I think when we talk about actual refereeing the law and applying the law, I think what you need is a bit of common sense around it. I think that it's when we talk about the nipple line, when we're looking at a centimeter or two over or a centimeter two under, it's pretty much irrelevant, I believe, because it's difficult. Because when you have a shoulder tackle, it's quite straightforward. You're either above the shoulder and on the neck, or you're not. Whereas the nipple line, it's much more difficult to see. Was he actually below the nipple line? Was he above the nipple line? Was he on the nipple line? So it's about getting the ones that really jump out, which matter really. Somebody who's well above the sternum or the nipple line, who's clearly above it, and just below the shoulders. They're the ones then that you should be looking to pick up as a referee. So my message is, as a referee, is not to get too hung up and worried on those sort of couple of centimeters. around the sternum, because it's going to be very, very difficult to get that precise line unless you get a ruler out every time that you're going to look at a tackle. So, get the ones that are clearly, for me, it's getting the ones that are clearly above that sternum line, rather than the one who may be on or just slightly. It's a little bit like the offside line. What you want to get are the ones who are clearly offside and affecting play. The guy who's out centre and is an inch or two offside pretty much is irrelevant, because his effect on what's going to happen next is negligible. Whereas the guy who's clearly in front of the offside line, well, they're the ones you need to get, because they're the ones who close the space down. And I think that's the way to try and referee this. That's the way that I've sort of been encouraging referees, or that's the way that I've seen, and the referees that I've spoken about it in the community game, to get the ones that you can see clearly are above that line. If you've got to stop and think, oh, was he just above it or was he on it, then that shouldn't be something that you need to sort of worry about, and very difficult to referee. And what I think you'll find then is that the game will look after itself when you get the ones that really matter, the ones that are clearly above. Then player behaviour will change, and then they'll aim to get lower to avoid that and avoid the penalties. So from what I've experienced here, Dave, I'm not sure if it's whether you can say the same over there, but what I've experienced here, I haven't seen sort of any issues with it really, to be honest, in the community game. Now, if they were to bring that into the elite game or the professional game, then I think that's when people will be scratching their heads then, because obviously it's a totally different game when it comes to that, because players are actually coached now to wrap or coach double tackle to hit high and to sort of prevent the offloads and stuff.
Gotcha. So have you seen a decrease in the injury rate?
Well, the community game, it's been negligible, I think. Unless somebody has the sort of facts and figures, I haven't been sort of watching my local teams here and seeing a difference in it, because we didn't see. It was very rare you saw a head contact in the community game. It really wasn't an issue in the game. Now, obviously, what we need to make sure that we make the community game as safe as we possibly can as well, of course, and that's why this is brought in. But I don't think it's been. I was a little bit apprehensive about it. I think, oh my God, how are they going to expect us to referee this, in the community game? But it really hasn't been an issue, to be honest. So it's made the game safer, I think. But it wasn't really a big issue in the community game, I don't think.
Okay. Brad, do we have a question?
Yeah, Dave, are you ready to transition to topic 4? I can toss Nigel a quick softball from Eddie O'Sullivan if we want to.
Go right ahead.
Excellent. Nigel, if you don't know, Eddie's coaching one of our university teams here in America, Brown. So a few minutes ago, he asked, we talk about general thoughts on new law changes. He talks, do you think the introduction of the new free kick law at the scrum is an attempt by World Rugby to dramatically reduce the number of scrums in a game? Do you think that it serves the game well, considering that the scrum is such a unique aspect of rugby?
I'm not sure, and it'd be very unfair for me to answer whether I think they want to reduce the amount of scrums in the game. I certainly hope not, and I wouldn't really know the answer to that one, or that particular question. I'm not a big fan of it myself. I just think it's going to land up in just too many free kicks being given, and a referee then maybe just giving a free kick instead of dealing with the actual issue that is going on in that game. The law that I don't like is the goal line dropout, when the attacking team is held up. I don't think that has brought anything positive to the game. To me, that has just brought negative play with the defending side, and that has reduced the amount of 5 meter scrums. So if you are, I'm a big. I wouldn't say that I'm not a big fan scrum of a fan. didn't play in the scrum and I didn't watch the game for the scrums, but I am a firm believer that the scrum is a very, very important part of the game, because we must keep rugby a game for all shapes and all sizes. And that law in particular certainly has reduced the amount of scrums, particularly around the 5 meter scrum, which is an important attacking weapon for a team who is a strong scrummaging side. And then you shouldn't be disadvantaged with that. And I do believe that the free kick is doing the same here, because I think what you will see happen is that, and again, the coaches are not dull. If you haven't got a strong scrummaging team, if you can make it look like the opposition are pushing early by not taking the hit, then you're gonna land up with a free kick, and then you can get yourself out of there. Or if you do give a free kick away because the referee feels that you haven't taken the hit, then the opposition can't ask for another scrum. So what you've done now is basically rewarded a side who has been negative, who can't scrum it. So I don't know the reasons why they brought it in. I think it's to quicken the game up so we have less resets. But my preferred choice would be to actually deal with the issues and get more positiveness in the scrum, would be my view on it. Because as I said, I think the scrum is a hugely important part of the game. It shouldn't be the most important part, but it should be. And I don't think anybody wants to see a game with 40 scrums in it, but I certainly do want a game where scrums are used in the way that they should be. Because you look at some games and the scrums are not a problem. You have two positive teams who are positive in the scrum, and the scrum is a beautiful part of the game, and it's not an issue. And then when you have some teams who are just negative in the scrums, or a referee who's not strong in his refereeing of the scrum, that's when you tend to get problems in the scrum. So I'm not a big fan of this free kick rule myself. We'll see how it goes, but I'd rather the sort of scrum be actually refereed rather than sort of a bit of an opt-out, I think, by just giving a free kick and getting out of it, so to speak, It
was interesting when I had dinner with Stephen Larkham when he was the attack coach for Australia, and his proposal back then was to eliminate the scrum within the 22s because he thought it would speed up the game. I wonder if that's where they're trying to push this towards.
Yeah, and then you're gonna what are you gonna land up with then? You may as well have then 15 rugby league players on the pitch. If you look at the big men who play in that front row, particularly in the community game, in the elite end of the game, professional in the game, yes, they can spend hours in the gym and they can change their body shapes and not maybe look like your prop. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people, the likes of Aaron Jones and all these, your Tad Furlong in Ireland, great scrummaging props, and they are props. They're not rugby league players. So the scrum needs to be an important part of the game, and if we lose that and lose identity of rugby as a game for all shapes and sizes, then you may as well go and watch a game of rugby league.
I agree with you. I'm an ex-front row player, so I'm a big proponent of the scrum.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in there? And I agree with Nigel here. I just worry that if you look at the two laws that Nigel has identified there, the goal line dropout eliminates 5 meter scrums, and now the free kick at the scrum eliminates a reset or eliminates another scrum. Is that? And I think it might have been recently a test game during the summer series where it was 30 minutes before there was a scrum. I think we're going to make the scrum a rare event in rugby, and I understand the difficulty managing it, but I agree with Nigel. It's such a unique aspect to rugby. It'd be terrible to lose it out of the game, and it would change the profile of the players getting the opportunity to play the game if we get rid of our props and our hookers.
Good deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to get too specific with certain instances and things like that when it comes to questions, or we probably could spend a lot more than 60 minutes, Dave. So if we've got some time at the end, I'll certainly jump back to some very specific questions that have been asked. But Dave, why don't you continue on with general thoughts on new law changes, and then when we get into how the game will evolve, I can probably ask one or two others that have popped in here.
Thank you, Brad. It was interesting. You mentioned your thoughts on the new offside law changes, Nigel. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this law, to be honest. I was one that sort of called this out and highlighted it's a law that could be brought in when we had a lot of the aimless kicking. Is where in the past if you were in front of a teammate who would kick the ball, as long as you weren't within 10 meters of where the ball alights. If you were within 10 meters of the ball alights, then you cannot be put onside. You've got to retreat until you are then put onside. But if you were in front of the kicker and not within 10 meters, as long as you didn't advance, you could stay there and you could be put onside by what the opposition did. Passing the ball, trying to catch the ball, kicking the ball, or running five meters with the ball. Now, obviously, that they've changed that, and I think that's a good thing, because what we are seeing is a lot of kicking, and then when the opposition team get the ball, they're looking up, and all of a sudden there's a line of men in front of them who may not have advanced, but they're not offside until they advance. And then once this guy runs 5 meters, then they're able to advance, even though they may have been from an offside position. And that just cuts down the space. So this, I think, it can do two things. The first thing is it's going to make you think a bit more about your kicking, I think, because if you've got players who are in front and liable to be penalised or can do nothing now, they're not going to be able to be part of your defence line. So it's going to make you think about your kicking. And obviously as well, I think it means that a team who receives the ball now has an opportunity to look at some space to counter attack, rather than just think, oh God, they're all standing in front there, and there's no way through. I'm going to put another up and down. This is where a lot of the ping pong kicking will come from. I don't think you're going to see a drastic change, particularly straight away. I still think you will see a lot of kicking, because kicking, for whatever different various reasons, is an important ploy of the game for a lot of coaches and a lot of teams, and a lot of teams do it. Even your best teams kick a lot. So that I don't think it's going to get rid of that, but I hope I hope that it does what it's meant to do, is to reduce the amount of kicking, and obviously give the opposition a bit more space to counter attack, which obviously would reduce the kicking as well. So this is, whether it actually has a huge impact and we see a huge difference remains to be seen, but I certainly can't see any negativeness to this. It's a little bit like the 50-22. I don't think we've seen much difference. It hasn't opened up the game, which was what they're hoping it would do, but it certainly hasn't brought any more kicking or sort of any negativeness to it. Whereas the goal line dropout, I believe, has just brought in, it hasn't brought anything positive to the game. If something, it's brought in negativity to the game, particularly around defending on the goal line. So this law, I think, as I said, let's hope it does reduce the kicking, and I hope it will do that. But I can't see any negativeness around this law change. So for me, this is a positive law change. And obviously, again, the important thing with the law change is that the referees referee it strictly, so that the players, don't take advantage in any way, that they actually referee quite strictly and keep refereeing strictly as well, so they can do what it's supposed to do.
Thank you. Any thoughts on the crocodile rule? I love that. We now have jackals and crocodiles.
Yeah, look, this is my pet hate with the and listen, I refereed it the same as everybody else did, so I'm no better in this way. But even when I was refereeing, even though I refereed it like that, I always said that if you want to tidy up the game and open up the game, you need to referee the contact area a little bit stricter as they are in law. And I've always said that the Crocodile was dangerous. It should have been outlawed a long time ago. It's outlawed now, so again, it's a very positive thing from World Rugby here in bringing this in, because it'll make the game safer, and we hopefully will eliminate it from the game. It's very similar to when we saw referees clamping down on the contact in the air with a spear tackle. Once we were all strict on it, it was refereed out of the game. So you don't see them. Yes, you see the odd contact in the air. You see the odd spear tackle now, but not to what it was 5, 10, 15 years ago when it was quite prevalent in the game. So the croc rule for me is, this is nice. It's a simple one. It's pretty easy to pick up. It's quite a straightforward thing to see. And, we need to be strong on it and get it out of the game, because this I think is a positive law change and makes the game a little bit safer as well.
Yeah, I like the new definition that they put into it. Also, it helps to clarify things.
It does, yeah. It certainly does as well. Yes, it does.
Okay, excellent. So one of the things that I think could possibly be, and it goes into similar to what you were talking about earlier, how do we infuse law knowledge in the training and practice for coaches and referees?
Sorry, say again, Dave. What you said?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said earlier we were talking about the communication between, coaches and referees. But specifically, do you have any recommendations on how we can infuse law knowledge into training and practices for referees and the players?
I think there's a couple of ways you can do it. I know, for example, here in Wales, so every club secretary, every club coach will have been sent out the law changes and the directives around it. Now, obviously, if it gets to the club secretary, does he pass it on to the club coach, and does he pass it on to the field? That becomes a different question. So there's obviously that way, which happens. But I think, as I mentioned to you earlier, the key thing is for referees to go into the training session with the teams and the coaches, because one, it'll benefit the referee as well. It can help the referee by learning a little bit more about refereeing the scrum, picking up the little traits that players do and stuff as well. So it'll help the referee hugely by going in and actually practicing refereeing live scrums and stuff like that. So it helps him, but also as well in the question that you've asked, Dave, is that it'll help then the coaches, the team as well, as by a referee going in there and actually explaining them to them. And when they do have a contact session, that the referee then referees a contact session, because that'll help then infuse the laws and understanding better, I think. And obviously hopefully what that will do, it will help a team reduce the penalties they give away in the game. Not only is that beneficial to the team itself, I think it's also beneficial to the safety of the game as well, particularly around sort of foul play law sort of changes or directives or clampdowns as well. So that's the best way for me, is to obviously in Wales we're probably quite lucky in one way, because we have so many clubs in sort of within a mile or two from each other. So you can sort of allocate 2 or 3 clubs to a referee in the community game as well as a professional game. So then, a referee may have 3 or 4 clubs or 2 or 3 clubs which he can go to when needed, when called on, or wants to go to train with them. Now, obviously, I suppose in the States we have bigger distances between clubs or colleges and stuff, then that's a bit more difficult maybe. But if you've got a referee in that area, then that I think is hugely, hugely beneficial. That to me is the best way, is by, and that helps the player. Helps the player referee and the coach referee and player relationship as well, I think, as well as hugely beneficial in infusing these understanding and changing in the laws as well.
Is there anything that we as a national body should be doing?
In what sense? In infusing those laws and stuff, you mean?
Yeah, as far as
but I think, obviously by holding events like this, by holding, whether it be a Zoom or in person, a seminar around it, and obviously inviting coaches together with that, so the referees and the coaches can have the conversations around something like this. So when we talk about the law change, you can see how the coach looks at it and what he expects from the referees, and obviously the coach can know what to expect from the law change and how the referee is going to implement it as well. So I think, seminars or a training evening, particularly sort of beginning of the season, when sort of discussing the new law changes or interpretations of how we're going to apply certain laws, and then maybe after the sort of first 4, 5, 6 weeks, you get together again by inviting the head coach or the forward coach or the coaches of those colleges or clubs to come together again with the referees. Say, well, look, how's it gone? What have we seen? Have we seen, referees? We don't think you've been very strict in this area of the game where we thought you would be. And the referees can tell, well, look, we told you we were going to be refereeing this very firmly, but it's still happening. So you need to get your players to change their behavior in this type of play, for example. So we do that in Wales here quite often, particularly beginning of the season, and then maybe quite a few rounds into the season, then in getting together. And there's an ongoing feedback, every week, particularly at the professional and the semi-professional side of things. There's always continuing feedback from coaches to the referee or the referee manager, the referee selectors. There's always feedback back and forth all the time.
Right. So here's a hard one. How do you see the game evolving, and what should we be considering as the National Collegiate Rugby as far as changes that or things that we should be incorporating in the future?
I think rugby's at a bit of a crossroads at the moment, and this is what I think we are seeing maybe sometimes a little bit too much sort of tinkering with the laws in trying to sort of fix little things, whereas the laws are there for a reason. And if you look at some of the great games of rugby that have been over the last World Cup and as recently, look at the summer tests, you look at some of the great test series between, England, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, great games of rugby. So that will tell you there's not much wrong with the laws of the game, and you can get great games of rugby. But all we need to do is to make sure that we apply those laws because they're there for a reason. Every law is there for a reason. And when we sort of sometimes look at the questions or the worries we have about a certain phases of the game, the answer is in the law book. It just needs to be applied. And if you look at the ruck, for example, if you look at the ruck, it's quite clear in the law book that you cannot willfully collapse a ruck. But the first thing we see do is somebody grab somebody, pull them to the ground so they can't pick the ball up or beat the ball. So a lot of the answers are there. But obviously the big sort of the big discussions going forward obviously is the head contact of the player safety, which is paramount. And I think, to be fair, World Rugby are doing all they can, and everybody, I think, is doing all they can to make the game as safe as we possibly can without actually changing a game beyond total recognition of what a game of rugby is. My only worry, for example, is with the 20-minute red card. I think, and this is where I get a bit worried, that I think sometimes people panic. They've brought in a 20-minute red card because they don't want people to be turning off from rugby, saying, "Oh, the game's over because somebody's been sent off in the first five minutes." I don't think the 20-minute red card is actually addressing the issue that needs to be addressed, which is changing player behavior in getting those tackles lower and reducing the risk of a head-on-head, or getting rid of the player's habit of clearing out with a head or shoulder first. We need to change the player behavior, and I think the 20-minute red card, I think, is not going to do that. It's not changing the deterrent I think what needs to be done is a stronger sanction. If you go flying into a ruck with your shoulder first, your head first, knowing exactly that you're putting the player in danger, and you shouldn't be you shouldn't be having a 2-week ban or the 3-week ban reduced by week by going to tackle school. You should be feeling the full brunt of it. Sorry, you're banned for 12 weeks or whatever it is, to change player behavior. So that's my only worry with sometimes the couple of these new laws, particularly the 20-minute red card, is it's not. I don't think it's trying to keep everybody happy without actually addressing the issue. I believe, and we have, we talk about the bunker as well. If I was reffing a game and I've got to send somebody off, I want to make that decision myself. I don't want to send it to somebody in the bunker who may not be an international referee or an ex-international referee. I want to, if I'm sending somebody off in a game that I'm refereeing, I want to be making that decision myself. I don't want to send it on to somebody else to make it for me. Unless you come to a place where you have, I don't know, if Angus Gardner is refereeing a game and Ben O'Keefe is in the bunker, then you've got two, your top referees. So they should be making a decision that is pretty much consistent with each other. But that's not really viable, because you need that guy with the other guy on the sideline, because he'll be the reserve referee if something happens. We don't have the numbers. They don't have the numbers to do that. So there's a couple of things I think that they need to be careful moving forward. But I think, to be fair to World Rugby and everybody involved, everybody's doing as much as they can to make the game as safe as we possibly can. But sometimes I think we panic too much sometimes, because when you bring in a law change, unless you really given it time to settle, then it's just too much of a knee-jerk reaction, and then in a season down the line it has consequences to the game, and that's one, for example, the goal line dropout. That's had consequences. I think it hasn't brought anything positive to the game. So the game is ongoing and evolving all the time.
Thank you. We have a little bit of time for a couple of questions, Brad.
Yeah, Daniel, I hope that answered your question about the future of what may or may not be happening. Nigel, in the back of my mind, my question was, I was asking whether or not that expectation changes based on the level of the game that you're refereeing. At an international level, that's very, I think most of us would probably agree with that. At what we see on a normal basis, you have so many new players to the game at an older age that we tend to probably give the benefit of the doubt more often than we should. I don't know if you had any quick perspective on that.
Yeah, when you mean benefit of doubt, regarding what? Regarding decisions in general, or decisions around foul play, or? Yeah,
severity, punishment, things like that. Yeah, around foul play or otherwise.
Yeah, I think you have to be a bit of empathy. I think that's the key thing, is that empathy, not sympathy. You're not going to sort of say, well, look, yeah, you did take somebody's head off, but I didn't think you were trying to do it, so don't worry about it. I won't send you off. I'll just give you a penalty. That's sympathy. That's empathy, is understanding how something happened and why something happened, and that there's a huge difference between empathy and sympathy. And empathy is what you want as a referee. I always go back to try and sort of simple this decision up to all of you listening. When I started running, some of you may have experienced this yourself. When I started refereeing, I always remember asking Derek Bevan or Clive Norling, your peers, always asking the senior referee when I do my first couple of games, how will I know it's a red card? And their answer to me was, don't you worry, you will know. Those alarm bells will go in your head. And I think that's where we're at the moment. I think we are seeing red or yellow cards given, which they're not triggering those alarm bells. And basically, you can hear the referee's voice going, "Oh, sorry, mate, I don't really want to send you off, but I have to." And what I try to tell him is, well, no, you don't have to. And this is where we need to look at the laws of the game in one sense around that is, a red card. And when you're reffing, particularly when you talk about giving the benefit of the doubt, it'll jump when you will know when there's something there that doesn't give the benefit of the doubt. You'll know when somebody's been total reckless or act of thuggery or cowardice. You know when you see that. And then there is no benefit of the doubt. There is no empathy then. You're gone. But then have the empathy, understanding. Oh, look, Chris, yeah, look, I can understand how you got frustrated. It's a little bit like it was one with one of our professional referees here in Wales in one of the European Cup games he did. There was a player on the ground which was grabbing the leg of a player and holding it and holding it and holding it, not letting it go. And the player had sort of pulled his leg, got his leg away, and then as he got his leg away, he just put a little gentle press on the player's hand, put his boot down on his hand and just gave a gentle press and say, like, don't hold me again. And he sent the player off. And I was trying to get around him. Well, look, this is where you need empathy. This is where, he didn't sort of stamp down at any speed or any height. He just put his hand on there, letting him know, and don't do that again. That is the benefit of the doubt. That is empathy. Look, I'm going to penalize you because I don't want you putting your feet in anybody's hands here. But also as well, I understand why you did it, and I'm going to give this player I'm going to penalize this player as well, even though I'm going to reverse it for holding your leg in there. So those are examples of when you have the benefit of the doubt, when you have that empathy and understanding. Whereas if somebody just blatantly stamps on somebody's hand with no reason at all, well then, I'm sorry, you're gone. There is no benefit of the doubt. There is no empathy or understanding why something happened then. But going back to answer your question, I think that is what you need to try and get a feel of as a referee, and you'll know the guy who deserves to be sent off compared to the guy who, you get the benefit of the doubt this time because I can understand how you reacted that way.
Okay, Brad, we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm going to try to get to Rachel and Jason, but it's very unlikely in the last 3 to 5 minutes here. So Rachel's asking about game management with the new laws, not taking them too literally and applying them maybe by the book at times. So the question more so is kind of a statement and a question. But she states, maybe sometimes we don't have to go straight to a free kick on a scrum with an issue, but rather use it as a tool for the ref when they're not getting the picture that they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point, Risha, because if you've got a clear offence, if you've got a clear offence which is a free kick, then give the free kick or give the penalty, whatever it may be. But if you're not sure, then don't be afraid to reset that scrum. You don't be afraid of saying, look, both sides went down. I want the both of you to hit a bit higher. Or look, there's too much movement here. Yes, you've gone backwards, but you putting too much pressure on. But I want you to take a bit more pressure as well. So there's a reason why you're resetting. Don't be afraid to reset that. Don't thinking that everything you have to free kick. The free kick now is a tool you have if you want to use it. But don't just go giving free kicks because you think there's an issue in the scrum. That reset should still be an important part, because if you think about it, you've got 16 people coming together. There's a lot of force and a lot of pressure there. And if you expect 16 people to come together absolutely perfectly with not a single inch moving one way or the other, it's impossible. That's where your empathy comes in. If you have somebody who's clearly pushing early, then free kick them. If you go one side that is maybe hasn't taken the hit and the other side has probably been a bit too adventurous in the hit, then you reset it. I want you to make sure that you take the hit better, please, and I want you to control your coming together as well. So you've got a reason now why you are resetting. So don't lose that, whatever you do. But also remember, you've got the free kick as well in your armory as well when you want to really deal with something that deserves to be dealt with. I'm happy
One
to
more.
answer Julia's question as well if you want, Brad. If
Or we
you've got
can't have
time.
one more, Dave?
One
I'm
more.
happy if you're happy. Yeah.
All right, one more sounds great. So, Jason, we'll squeak yours in here. Sorry, Craig, you're gonna have to take a back seat. So Jason's asking, it's around communication between coach and ref again. So I'm gonna paraphrase his question, but obviously we're all familiar with the directive that communication needs to go through the captain during the game. Sideline coach chatter should be kept to a minimum. Jason's suggesting the possibility or the potential effectiveness about extending halftime maybe a little bit longer and allowing coaches to have a small bit of communication with the referee at halftime to either get clarity or maybe make a suggestion or otherwise, and what your thoughts might be around that, just to.
Okay, and let me just one thing you picked up there about just the captain speaking to the referee. Yes, in general, when I refereed, I always just tell the players in the change room before the game. I always just tell them, look, I've got no problem speaking to any one of you at any time, as long as it's done at the right time and the right moment. So let's say the hooker wanted to speak to me about the scrum setup, and he wasn't the captain. There was no way I was going to tell that hooker, no, you tell your captain to come and speak to me. So I would tell the hooker, look, if you've got issues in the front row, you come and speak to me. As long as you're asking the question and you're asking at the right time when there is a stoppage on where we could be sort of walking to the line out and you've got something to ask, I'm happy to speak to any of you at any time, as long as it's done in the right manner and the right time. And I always used to find that then you built that rapport with the players then, because if you go into the team, into the game, and you're saying, look, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking to anybody but your captain, then obviously all of a sudden you're putting 14 players then on against you. So sometimes you will. Sometimes we'll say, look, lads, I'm not here to have discussions with you, and I'm not carrying on like this. So from now on, if you've got any issues, go and speak to your captain, and I'll speak to him when the time is right. So there will come a time where you need to do that, but just be open to have, because if your captain's a full back, you're not going to have a bloody clue what's going on in the front row. So you're better off speaking to the front row player than actually speaking to the captain, the full back. So don't think that it's just the captain. Use that as your own benefit and your own tool in building that relationship with that team. Definitely no would be the part of your second question, Brad, because I remember going to referee a game in the English Premiership on exchange a few years ago. And for a period, I don't think they do it now, but for a period of time, the coach could bring in a card to you where he would write down 3 things that he felt there was an issue. And I said, are you serious? Because there won't be anything positive from that. It'll always be a coach having a gripe about he doesn't like your decisions. There'll never be a balanced view. There may be the odd coach who could be balanced in his view, but they'd be very far and few between. The only thing as well I would say to you to bear in mind, I'm not sure what you do out there in the States. I wasn't a big fan at all, and I never did it myself, of looking at my mobile phone at half time to see what my coach or somebody felt about the way I refereed the first half. Because what that can bring, it has its benefits, I guess. If you're really struggling in the scrums and somebody's giving you a bit of advice and telling you, look, the tight head is taking the piss of you here, then you can look at that and sort of address it. So it does have the benefit, I suppose. But it also, you've got to be very, very careful. It can bring in inconsistency then. And that could be the same with if the coach is coming to you half time with a point, and then you change the way you referee something in the second half, then you will referee the second half totally different to referee the first half, and then you have a consistency issue, really. So my view on it and my advice to referees that I coach is that if you're going to have 2 or 3 decisions in the 40 minutes of the first half, and they could be wrong or they could be, a bit harsh, Well, I'd rather have those similar decisions a bit harsh in the second half than have 30 harsh in the first half and a 30 totally different in three harsh in the first half and then 3 totally different in the second half, because you are now leaving yourself way open now, which is the biggest gripe I believe of any coach will be consistency. So no, I wouldn't be a fan of that. If it could be you, if you could guarantee that you had a coach that is sensible and the feedback is done in the right way and constructive and positive, and the referee is able to take that on board, but yet still referee the game consistently, then yes, it'd be great. But I don't think we have the ability to do that, none of us. So yeah, I'd be a bit apprehensive about that. And again, it comes down to, maybe if you want to trial it, you want to put something in place for a couple of weeks and see how it goes and see what the feedback is. Then then give it a try and see how it works out. But I don't think they did it wrong in England. I don't think, because when the coach brought me that, I told him where to shove his cards at half time. So yeah, but look, and again, if it's something you want to trial and have a go at, then and there is a benefit to it. But I think it'd be very, very difficult to manage and control and police, I believe, particularly frustrations of decisions as well,
Good. Well, thank you, Nigel. This has been a great hour you spent with us, and we appreciate the time that you've taken.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And if you ever come over to the States, you got a place to stay.
I look forward to it very much. Thank you.
Well, thank everybody for attending today. We're going to wrap it up here a little bit over time. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next session.
Bye-bye. Good luck, everybody.